We now have a panel session with four people who were at a meeting last week where we discussed network performance and quality of service. They are Steve Watt, John Aldington, Jeremy Sharp and Matt Cook. I'll do a little bit more introduction in a moment. If they'd like to come up to the podium, please. So Steve Watt of the University of St Andrews will be speaking later today. John Aldington from GoTech, Jeremy Sharp from JISC, who've spoken already today, and Matt Cook from Loughborough. Matt, in a moment, will sum up a little bit of what went on at the workshop last week with network performance and quality of standards.
Okay, we've had a number of workshops that we've run for the community over the last few years. You may remember our previous one was on Visitor Wireless, where we actually discussed the cloud implementation and how that would work for organisations. We had a number of points raised within the community about network performance and quals, that there was an interest. So last week, 25 people met in a small work group environment to look at that particular area and where colleagues within JISC and people within Ucisa could help the community. We're making the presentations available shortly. I've sent them to the Ucisa office, so with any day they'll be on the website, and I'll send an email around the Ucisa NG mailing list to make sure that you receive those and you know where to look. There was 4 highlights that I've distilled from the discussions. There's an interest in future activities within JISC that I know Jeremy's taking forward, and we'll fill you in more on those as the months progress throughout the rest of the year. There was a great interest in monitoring services, looking at the work that RIPE's done with the probes, looking at potential areas for Edgero probe monitoring that the Janet and JISC.1x SIG are working on at the moment. Also a lot of interest in Perf Sonar and looking at the way monitoring could be integrated into devices, the opportunities that SDN brings for integrating Perf Sonar in those devices in a similar way to what Cisco has done with IPSLA. And finally, and an area that we're going to look at within Ucisa is to provide some areas of contract advice, guidance, case studies, things that you might want to put in to cover monitoring and performance in those areas. So you'll hear a little bit more about that as the months progresses, and I'll drop you an email when the presentations come available. Thanks.
So there's about 10 minutes before lunch, and we have a few microphones here. What we would like to do is give you the opportunity to either ask questions of the panel in relation to what Matt has just spoken about, make observations about network performance and quality of service in regards to what you perceive as the future demands and so on and so forth on the networks that we will provide. And we'll capture some ideas possibly from that and expand on these feedback areas. So, any questions or observations first of all? Rob?
Amanda Ferguson from Nottingham Trent University. Could you tell us whether any of the conversations involve feeding into analytics? Wi-Fi analytics?
I can't remember, I don't think it was covered by PNSA, was it?
No. So I'll answer some of that. We didn't talk specifically about Wi-Fi, but there was quite a lot of discussion about measurements and monitoring of network performance. And one thing that came out is the traditional measures of network performance, like how busy a link is measured every 5 minutes, is actually a terrible proxy for the end user experience. And there was quite a lot of discussion about methods of really measuring and monitoring what's going on. And something that a company called Predictable Network Solutions brought to the table is they have little probes that they can install in a network that inject packets at a very low rate across the network and then look at what happens to those packets as they arrive or not at the other end. So are any packets being dropped? Are packets being delayed? and what does the delay distribution look like. And that has very good predictive properties for how applications will perform and, for example, how a VoIP session will work. And I really see no reason as to why that couldn't be extended to wireless as well as to wired networks. So I
Yeah,
think
it's something I know you're looking at a trial at Nottingham Trent of a specific package. I think that would be really interesting to hear more about that.
Yeah, we are, but again, I really like the idea of SDN and not being locked in, frankly. So if we can do something around that, that would be even better. But one of the things I am concerned about, so something like the cloud, again, did you talk about that and this offering from Janet, and whether we can get data from that from a visitor basis?
So at this particular workshop, we didn't cover off the cloud.
Oh, okay.
We covered it at a previous one.
Right.
I don't know if there's any data available or
No.
from that area from
No. Okay.
JISC.
So if we actually put that in and start to use it for our guest access, we wouldn't be able to feed that into an analytics platform. Feed data from.
There was a presentation that came from, I think I'm remembering correctly, University of Bath at the previous workshop.
Right.
And I can send you a link to that presentation where they showed the dashboard that was available as part of the product. I don't know if there's an interface for exporting the data, a SOAP, a RESTful
Okay.
API or anything like that, but that might help with some of the questions in that area. And certainly we'll take on board the points about covering off SDN, OpenFlow, Open Daylight in that area. We've got some taster sessions, as you've seen from our partners. I know they're running a number of events as well outside of this, and it's something that we'll keep an eye on and keep the community informed on.
Okay.
I think just to mention one other thing that was mentioned at the workshop last week was the possibility of something like producing Android or iOS apps, so that if a student's having a bad wireless experience, they can say enable detailed monitoring, and then that app would talk back, and you could get a very good detailed data on what's actually going on with the network link and with the wireless. Now, I should say that was very much bounced around as a possible idea, so it might be helpful to find out from the audience, actually, is that something that would be of interest, and is that something that we should look at taking forward?
Quick show of hands on whether some form of app monitoring. Thank you. Vast number of the audience, actually. If you take the next question or comment from Rob Evans, who's taking the centre. Rob Evans from JISC.
Hi, I was actually just going to follow up on that. I mean, as I'm sure Matt knows, there's been some work on a EduRoam probe for measuring EduRoam wireless performance, and also there's some work in Terrainer that was going to try and tie that up, or looking to start tying that up with the RIPE Atlas probes. So RIPE Atlas is a widely deployed wired network measurement tool, but a lot of the probes have an unused wireless device in them. And so there's been some discussion about kicking off a bit of work to try and use those to measure wireless performance, certainly within the EduRoam context. I don't know whether that might be relevant or not, to what you're asking there.
Thank
We
you.
can certainly ask our colleagues at the 821 SIG to report on the Ucisa NG list, if that would be of interest, to let us know where that is. There might be a presentation at Net Workshop, there usually is, but I'm not sure of the schedule.
I'll also ask Brooke Schofield, who is doing some of the stuff in Terrainer as well as Joint Association, as is, what's happening with it as well.
That'd be brilliant, thanks.
And Brooke is a speaker at Net Workshop. I think we have a session on this.
Oh, that'd be good. So
area.
if you're attending Net Workshop, then we'll get an update there as well.
Any other questions, observations on network performance and quality of service? Jem.
Jim Taylor at University of Highlands and Islands. Is there anything new on IP telephony across Janet and engaging with telcos who are not happy with the plenty of overhead but no QoS regime?
Yes, we have had Vodafone recently join the dynamic purchasing system, so our first, I suppose, major sort of telephony provider, as well as the whole range of sort of second tier providers as well. And Vodafone essentially have no issues with the sort of stance that we have on the backbone, the obviously provisioning to sort of peak load. So we're in discussions with BT at the moment. That's likely to be very slow. I don't think there'll be any announcement there, but with other major telcos, with Vodafone being the first, I think that's the start of things.
Thank you. Any other questions, observations? Okay, before we move to wrapping up in time for lunch, something I took away from the event of last week of network performance and quality of service, that somebody reported there that on some types of links, probably not within our sector, but in other sectors, that traffic that actually is measuring the performance is sometimes taking up to 50% of the actual bandwidth, which I found staggering. Our colleagues from STFC were also pointing out that sometimes there's concern that the number of performance monitoring devices that people are bringing up can actually have an impact. So in our desperate desire to monitor the performance, we are actually affecting the service that we're delivering. So I thought that's a useful thing to think about and take away. Okay, what I'd like to do is say thank you very much for the people in the session. So on the panel, Steve Watt, Jamie Sharp, John Alderton and Matt Cook, but also the speakers from this second session. John Holgate from the University of Cambridge, was a fascinating talk about wireless in Cambridge, and the people who started at the beginning talking about SDN, Henry Batten and Mike Baker. If we could give a round of applause to all of them for their contributions.